latest episode of 305 Vox Populi here in the town of Miami Lakes. I'm Mayor Manny Cid, and this is Season 4, Episode 1, and we have a great guest to kick it off. We have Miguel Martinez, the chair of our Blasting Advisory Board. How you doing, Miguel?
Doing very well. Thank you for having me. And last time I was here, this room has changed quite a bit. Very impressive what they've done. Very impressive.
It's definitely changed a lot, and we're going to thank some of those sponsors that made it all happen. We're powered by Miami Lakes AutoMall. Shout out to Fred Samuel. We appreciate you. Miami Lakes AutoMall is located at 16600 Northwest 57th Avenue in the heart of Miami Lakes. Their phone number is 305-455-3510. If you need a car, reach out to them. Fred and the whole team does a great job. The mural. What do you think about this mural, Miguel?
Incredible. It's incredible.
So the mural is put together by Grisel Gajano, who is a superstar. She is a school counselor during the day and an artist that does great work like this in the afternoons. Her number is 786-353-8608. You can send her a text message. I know folks have seen her stuff and have sent her messages, and she's actually done some of this stuff in different locations. And our food sponsor today, Sergio's Cuban Cafe and Grill, Miami Lakes. Thank you to the corporate operations manager, Raul Abreu. We appreciate you. They're located at 15135 Northwest 67th Avenue here in the town of Miami Lakes. You can reach them at 305-508-9881. Croqueta de jamón. I know you had one earlier, right?
I won't lie, yes I did.
Good stuff. We appreciate you guys. And the film production team, Matter Lakes Broadcasting, what can I say about these folks? They do a phenomenal job. I mean, they started off with an idea, a handful of students, a camera phone, and they have an entire production class where they have 90 students learning every single day in real time. And we actually have students here today, and they take this footage and they go back to school and put it all together. So you guys are awesome. Ariel, Vitico, Lewis, and all the students. Really appreciate you guys and keep up the great work. You guys are the envy of all of Dade County for what you guys do. And Enrique Santos, my brother Enrique Santos, thank you for his donation, the roadcaster that he donated to this podcast. For the students actually utilize this almost on a daily basis at school, not only here at the podcast, but to broadcast video and their games and different things. So appreciate you, Enrique and Harold. Shout out to you guys. And to you, Miguel, one of the major issues number one issue, right, in our community is rock mining blasting. So why do you do what you do? When did you say, you know what, enough, I'm going to lead the effort, I'm going to push forward, and I'm going to make sure that our voices are heard and we see some reforms going forward?
Well, as you know, or you're not, my background's in architecture. And in architecture, we're trained to put together the pieces of a puzzle to come up with a solution. And when I began seeing the damage in my home, my office, the community, piece of the puzzle started being formed. One night we had returned from a trip from Orlando with our son, and to come home, and our living room was full of mold. We have cathedral ceilings in our house, and the entire front wall was full of black mold. Obviously, it's dangerous, health issues and whatnot. We didn't know where it was coming from. Obviously, we're having a roof leak, but our home has cathedral ceilings and has a front porch with 2 columns. The columns, I was noticing that they were starting to crack. They were settling, but settling oddly. We're not settling like regular columns that with loading how it happens. So I began documenting this, not having a clue where the source is. And at the same time, around the same time, I typically go to the Civic Association meetings in PSN. PSN meetings, they're always talking about the blasting. I had no idea what they were talking about. And every month after month, they were issuing letters and hearing their frustrations and nothing, no movement in it. Until one day I'm in the office at the town center, and I learned what was a blast. A blast hit, and so significant that my monitor fell off the stand onto my desk, and under my feet, the floor cracked. I watched the crack go down my office, under my desk, and into the waiting room. And I had no idea what this was. Soon thereafter, I started hearing the complaints of that it's a blast. This is what the blast does. Then seeing all the damages happening structurally, knowing what the components of a building is, why these damages are happening, I started studying the effects of cracks and why cracks occur. There's actually a science behind them. And there are different types of cracks that occur from different sources. So the seismic cracks is what we were being affected. Now, we don't have earthquakes here, so why are we getting seismic cracks? And again, I just started looking into it further and further, and basically learned the issue of how the source from the blast and what's called the propagation of the wave, or how the wave moves, which is underground, and the issue that we have that we're on the Biscayne Aquifer. The Biscayne Aquifer is water, and water is incompressible, so it carries the energy wave great distances without decay. So things started making sense. That's how it began.
So no, that's extremely powerful. And I'll share a story how I met you. A lot of times, in especially being mayor, I meet a lot of people, but sometimes there's not enough folks in our society that get deep down into the weeds of the issues, right? To make major reforms. And I remember going to Tallahassee and hearing from state legislators that did not represent this area, did not understand the issues. Like, hey, why aren't there more residents involved in this? Why don't more people get involved? And I remember coming back to Miami Lakes, and I was like, you know what? We got to work with PSN, Miramar. We got to do a bus trip. So we go out, we front the money, town of Miami Lakes, thinking we're gonna get, it's gonna go three ways: Miramar, PSN, and us, split it in three ways. We front the money, we rent this bus, and man, immediately the bus is packed for registrations. We get all these people that register. We're like, wow, we're gonna make such an immense impact. We're ready to go. I remember that night, like if it was yesterday, I showed up here to City Hall to thank you guys, walk on the bus. And when I get here, there was only three people. It's Miguel Martinez, Yvonne, and Raquel Platt, right? It was right. And I look at the list and I see there's like 40 something names on the list. So I was like, listen, I need everybody's cell phone number. So I sit, that's like 9 o'clock at night. I sit down and all these folks confirmed. I sit down and I just start going one by one, calling them from the reception area. It's like, hey, this is Manny Cid. This is Mayor Cid. Just calling to see where you're at. And folks were like, I'm sleeping, can't make it. Oh, I forgot. Oh, this and that. There were even members, I believe, of our blasting advisory board at the time that didn't even show up. I think there were some that even quit because they didn't want to go on this adventure. And I remember feeling like looking around and saying, man, this is terrible. And I called all 40 names on the list, and everybody told me an excuse. But I remember going on the bus afterwards and saying, talking to you guys, and you guys were all about it. You, Yvonne, and Raquel. And because of that, I've always had this great respect for you, because I'm like, man, while everybody else in our society sitting on the sidelines, not getting involved, not giving back, you went on I think a 9-hour bus trip, 9 hours up, 9 hours back, to advocate on behalf of other folks. And for the record, I don't think we've ever gotten reimbursed from Miramar. Didn't show up. PSN, their civic association, really doesn't have much money, but we ended up still paying the entire bill. But that's when I said, you know what, Miguel Martinez is the real deal. Miguel, Yvonne, Raquel, because they went on this trip. And I remember talking to you afterwards, and we were like, had to make an appointment. I was like, listen, my appointment to be Miguel Martinez. I mean, this guy's for real, and he's going to take this issue as far as possible. So if you could talk to us about that night, and maybe how you felt, because you knew, you were in the belief that 40 other people were going to show up with you on that bus going to Tallahassee. And being in a 50-passenger bus with 3 people, from your perspective, seeing those cracks in your office and seeing it in real time and understanding, what was your take from that, and how did that motivate you going forward?
I remember that night. The reality is, I went to send off the people as well. I wasn't expecting to go on the bus, to be honest with you. My wife went with me, and when she saw how many people were there, she looked at me, she says, you're going. I wasn't prepared to go. You're going. I'm running to Publix. I'm going to get you a goodie bag, and you're going to take it and go on the trip. And she sent me off. We went. It was interesting nonetheless. I went to school in Tallahassee, so the trip was familiar. And it brought back a lot of memories and whatnot. However, to me, the big thing was the return trip. Everybody slept on the bus, I'm an insomniac, I don't sleep. So I actually pulled out my laptop and I started writing notes and thoughts of what we just experienced, and came up with a game plan to where we're at now. The reality is, one of the frustrations that the PSN was going through was as they wrote letters to elected leaders and politicians and whatnot, and quote unquote nothing's happening, so the frustration. But the reality is that people need to understand politicians. They come from all walks of life. A good number of them are attorneys, but they each have their own knowledge, and each have their lack of knowledge. So if you're asking them to handle something that they're not familiar with, how are they going to do it? So the first thing, and something my father pushed on me, is education, is to inform and educate. So that was the first sign, is to advise them they need to know that we have a problem. So we created the website. I'm sure you've received, the countless emails have gone out. I stopped counting at 10,000 emails gone through our server. And it's the website allows a user to send an email to every elected official in the state in Tallahassee, all pertinent offices, the governor, and the local politicians and the media. So now we created awareness that we have a problem. And it was, again, education. It's to inform that there is a problem. From that point forward then I made a group, actually a civil group, and one of the members is an attorney, and he had his office sponsor a study. It's a 2-part study from 2 teams of engineers, a seismologist, and a forensic structural engineer. So we studied the propagation of the energy wave. So now we can prove that it's actually happening, because the miners tell the politicians that the energy wave doesn't reach our homes. So now we can prove that it does reach our homes. Then what is the effect, and it's called the response of the structure to these energy waves. So this other team of engineers were brought in, and the effects were then studied. It's real, it's a problem, and now we know. So now let's get the word out so we can start making changes and educate the public of these issues that are real. So it then evolved into that, doing public presentations and going to communities, HOAs, and informing the public of who, what, where, so they can learn what misinformation is out there. A lot of misinformation is spread out, that we have to stop that. People are making mistakes dealing with their insurance companies and different items as such. So that was the campaign from that point.
You know, and a lot of folks forget that I was an aide in the state legislature for 7 sessions, right? So I know what happens up there pretty well. I was the one that would write legislation, pass appropriations, and I was in charge of that. I would stay on the weekends and negotiate during budget time. But I'll tell you, that's one of the main issues with rock mining blasting, is that every single advocacy group in Florida, there's thousands, every single one of them. If there's an issue that the state legislature is going to do and it's going to affect realtors, 1,000 realtors show up to the state capitol. 1,000 realtors. If there's an issue with doctors, if there's an issue with insurance, every single group shows up in huge numbers, and I think that was something that was always tough on rock mining blasting, because you're right, the industry always had their lobbyists up there. Not only their lobbyists, but the people that were employed or FDOT, whoever benefited from the aggregate, will show up there advocating, and not enough voices were on the other side. So I appreciate you for doing that, because I know now you have a different group and you guys are flying up there. You guys went up there last session. The other thing that to me is tough, and I wanted you to touch upon, there are people that believe this is a partisan issue.
Right.
And I think, and I laugh when I hear that, because as much as you hear Democrats say, no, this is the Republicans on their own. Or then you hear Republicans say, no, listen, this is a bipartisan issue. The only path forward is a bipartisan path. And I got to give credit to some of the folks around, Manny Cid, Brian Avila. There were small steps, right? We know it's not enough, but there were at least small steps. And then now you have Tom Fabricio, who showed up to the state legislature, just going up there challenging everybody on this issue. But I think he realized, hey, you got to create consensus, and with consensus, to get to consensus, you have to educate. So what's the game plan going forward to bring Republicans, Democrats, Independents together, create that consensus via education, and make sure that this issue once and for all is mitigated? We know we're not going to eliminate rock mining blasting forever because of the role that they play in the state of Florida. FDOT's their biggest purchaser of the aggregate that comes out of those mines for all the roads. But what's that game plan going forward to get enough legislators to understand that the impact that it's having here in our community is devastating, and there has to be a path forward?
Well, there's a few things that you're touching on. Absolutely, it has to be bipartisan. It's actually, I don't call it bipartisan. I call it irrelevant. The energy wave goes through everybody's property. It doesn't matter who's living in there or what they believe in or not. That's one aspect. The next aspect, what happened in Surfside. In Surfside, I've been in contact with the federal engineers that are investigating the matter, and I provided studies to them that the energy wave from the pile driving, the adjacent building, how it can cause damage. Now, I'm not saying that was what took the building down, but it is probable a one element of the cause. And what happens with that is the energy wave propagation in the water saturated soil. That's liquefaction. So again, information wise. So with that, what's happening here locally, the construction types, I wouldn't fear of a collapse, a catastrophic collapse like what happened in Surfside. Construction type here in our area is different than what is along the shoreline. Totally different actually. But the effects and response still occurs, and we need to understand what those responses are. So the first step is to understand this energy wave, and by the Miami-Dade pilot program, it's called, it's a study for 36 months. They've allocated, I believe it's $3 million in total for the study, and they've installed, they awarded 25 devices to monitor the wave, and they've actually installed 23. And what's happening, that leaves a small difference in which more things can be purchased in budget-wise. That study is creating data, and it's being populated into a website that will be active, and the website's active. It will be made to the public in October. The data that's being acquired in there will show all the issues that are happening. Now, I'm being advised that legislation will be requested to pass laws based on scientific data obtained now, official. And if they decide not to pass laws, the CFO's office, which is in charge of mining and blasting, will create a paper of best practices that the miners must abide by. So one way or another, we're going to start seeing relief of ongoing blasting and this energy damage that's happening. So it's more than a start, but it's definitely an end result.
So I think COVID shed a new light on this, right? So when I was a kid growing up here in the town, I'm 38 now. I moved here when I was 8 years old, so I've been living here for 30 years. When we moved into the town and we lived in West Lakes, my mom still lives out there, we had no idea that this existed until my grandmother retired, and then I would stay during the summer sometimes, or there was a teacher working day home, and we were like, what is that? What's going on? And you would feel the shaking. And then you would see the cracks on the wall and the cracks in the driveway. But I think the same thing happened during COVID. The amount of people that felt blasting for the first time ever, I mean, thousands.
Absolutely.
Because they were home and they were like, because if not, you're not home between 11 o'clock and 1 o'clock. Most folks, the vast majority of our society is out there working, they're grinding, they're making sure to make ends meet. But that's when everybody, and I think that's what shed that new light on this. Because you heard it from the kids today. The first question I asked them was like, do you guys feel this like at Manor Lakes? Like, do you know what rock mining blasting is? No. Do you guys feel the shake at Manor Lakes?
Right.
Yes. How did COVID give you guys that new opportunity to get more folks involved, to get people moving forward to a solution? Because I think that awoke a sleeping giant, the amount of folks in our area that now this is their issue.
Absolutely, and you hit the nail on the head. If people are home and they're being exposed to this earthquake, I call it synthetic earthquake. Now that they know and they're experiencing it and they're feeling it, to know what it's doing to their property and how everybody sees cracks on concrete and their driveway and their walls and whatnot, and you expect that you take that as a reality that structures crack. Well, when they start learning that there's a reason why it's cracking, now it's a different story. When they put two and two together of the source that they actually felt the shake and see the crack, now it's a whole different picture that's being painted, and there's more involvement in it. We don't see as much as it's someone else's problem. We're seeing that people are getting involved, that we need to do something about this. Unfortunately, I still see that people are looking at other people wanting to do something for them, but there's much more backing that there wasn't before, which is it's a good thing. They want and they expect something to occur, so there's a lot of support now that with reason that it didn't happen before. So I credit that a lot to COVID as the instigator for that.
No, that is very true. So a couple things you do different on the show is that the kids are going to ask you some questions, right? Abetigo, I know they're going to get ready for that. Before we get there, I have one more question for you. Our society has been used to having everything spoon-fed to them on an information level. So how do you take from what you're doing today to layman's terms where everybody can understand and embrace? Because I think I get it, you get it. I think our state legislature is starting to become educated. But how do we make sure that that it's almost like spoon feeding folks?
Yeah.
You know, it's unfortunate, but that's what it's turned into when it comes to a 24-hour media cycle. How do you compete with that and make sure that this information goes through a saturation of info that folks are seeing every day? How do you make sure that what you're putting out, because what you just told me today, you and I have talked about it many times, and I know a lot of folks are going to be hearing this for once, but how do you make sure you take that to the lowest, to layman's term where everybody understands it?
Right. Well, that's exactly it. It is taking things to layman's terms so it's understandable. A lot of it are concepts that you're not exposed to. They're not familiar with. So when they start seeing the damage, how it happens, and you can expose them and educate them, inform them of a particular energy wave type, and say this does this, now look at this damage, it's an actual physical example they can see and compare. They start getting an understanding of it. So it's a matter of translating the science into layman's terms so it becomes understandable. As an architect, that's one of the things that we do, that we're able to speak, as an example, we speak to a structural engineer, mechanical engineer, a plumbing engineer, and bring it down to fruition to a contractor, to the foreman, down to the worker, and or the client. Again, gratitude to you with the tour that you gave us for one of our patients at your restaurant. We were talking about your kitchen as an example with his mother, that a kitchen, in a commercial kitchen, she was surprised how small it can be. I said, do you understand the circulation that happens, the movement that happens within a kitchen? That's designed, and its efficiency of a kitchen. Well, as I explained to her in the layman's terms of what happens at a kitchen, it is the same principle that happens with this. It's science, and in reality, it's physics from high school. It's not very advanced science, but many people never they understand the concept, don't understand the terminology. And when you use the terminology, you lose them. So if we can explain the terminology, they can understand the concepts, you start putting two and two together, and people understand what's happening. So that's the intent.
That is true. That's a great way to put it. So what questions do you guys have for Miguel? Because I know this impacts you every day. I can only imagine you guys writing on a piece of paper, taking notes, and then your entire class shakes, and everybody loses focus for that moment. So what questions do you have for Miguel?
Well, I wanted to ask you, why did you want to become an architect?
Good question. I always enjoyed construction, and I'm from New Jersey. I grew up in New Jersey, and in New Jersey we actually built a second story to our first home, and then built entirely a two-story house from scratch. And I was fascinated. My father did the plans. My father was a chemical engineer, but he was always mechanically inclined and wanted to become a mechanical engineer. He actually did the plans, and I watched them, and I was as a little kid. So I was always involved in the construction and enamored by it. And I wanted to be a carpenter, actually. My mother is the one who says, no, those guys are working outside in the sun all day long, or we're from New Jersey in the winter in the snow. My kid's not going to be outside all day long, not doing that. So think of something else. I said, well, who's the carpenter's boss then? She said, well, the architect tells him what to do. Then I'll be an architect. So that's how it started. To learn that an architect, not necessarily you're inside all day long in the office, you actually have to go to the field, and I enjoyed that. Having the background that I have, in construction, I actually taught a lot of the carpenters, literally. I would grab a hammer and go alongside them and teach them how to, do installations or whatever it took.
What are a couple ways that you're planning on fixing the rock mining blastings?
The rock mining blasting, it is an essential activity. There's no question. We need it. We enjoy living in civilized society. We enjoy driving on the road. We enjoy living in a home. And all these things come from the product that the miners produce. However, we cannot be collateral damage to their profits. So they have to lower their profits or not, but by means of which they're doing it has to be addressed so that we are not collateral damage. So in this study that's being happening by the state now, it will encourage universities even for studies because the data will be available where typically you couldn't get something like this. This data will show that the energy wave that's coming is damaging our properties, and something has to be done to address that. So that's what our goals are. That for them to lower their intensity, they'll continue to operate. Nobody has a problem with them working and making money. We all have a problem with being collateral damage. We shouldn't have our homes damaged because they're doing what they're doing. So that's the intent.
So this is more like a curiosity question. So all these lakes in like West Hialeah, were they previously limestone mines before they became lakes?
If you notice if you look on a map, there's a map there. When you see water bodies that are particularly squared off, it's man-made. Now, the difference between previous lakes, older lakes, around developments and whatnot, the depth of these lakes are typically around 15 feet. The reason is because the excavator, the mechanical arm of the machine that pulls the rocks out, that's the length of the depth that it will reach. So these lakes, Pembroke Pines and whatnot, all these areas the lakes are 15 feet. The lake that they're building now, off 75 in Miami Garden and the Turnpike, is 85 feet deep. You won't be able to build anything around it when it's done. It's too deep. It's dangerous, actually. And the reason or how they're doing it is by blasting. So they're blasting. They have the drag line, the big blue crane you guys see. It's actually dropping down to the bottom and scooping the rocks out when they blast. So it's the two different types of lake bodies that you'll see. If you go down the Turnpike, you'll see crystal blue waters, lakes. Those are all mines that are been completed. It's similar.
Interesting. You guys got anything else from Miguel? Got it. Miguel, the other thing we do is that we turn the script around and you get to ask me any questions that you might have.
You sure you want me to do that now?
Listen, man, I'm good.
Actually, curiosity. People take me, since I've been involved and out in the public and open and whatnot, and many times they take me as a politician, quote unquote. As such, I will get the hecklers. I get what is the human nature. There's people always against you no matter what. And I find my challenge is how to deal with somebody like that. I know you get the same. So how do you deal with it?
Man, I'll share with you this story. So when I first got elected, I had a dream, right? I said when I first got elected to the city council in 2012, I had a dream that we can do better, we can be better, we can be transparent. And one of my first items was to put the broadcasting cameras inside of the chamber, because we were building City Hall at that time, and we can hardwire it so folks can see our meetings in real time. It didn't exist back then. From incorporation till 2013, you had to show up to a meeting to know what was going on. I said, man, that doesn't make any sense. We need to be that city that's a great example. And I remember I put that on the agenda, and there were people that were against it. There were people that didn't believe in transparency. There were elected officials and people in the audience, and I remember getting my character assassinated. Hey, this is terrible, you're wasting money, we don't need this, if people aren't involved. And I was 28 at the time, and I'm looking around, and I was like, this is crazy. Like, I don't even know these people. And they're talking about me like if they've known me and attacking me, this and that. So that first time, it impacted me. I'll tell you, as a human being, think about it. As a human being, if you walk into a room and 3 out of 10 people hate you just because you're a different party, you're a different ethnicity, you're a different perspective, it kind of sucks, right? It doesn't feel good. But I remember feeling that first time. But I said to myself, if I want to be successful, I gotta grow alligator skin. I gotta get really, really, really tough skin. So going forward, it became easier. That time it really impacted. I'm telling you, I went home and I talked to my wife. I was like, what did I just do? Like, what did I just get into? Like, who are these people? And then, but going forward, yeah, it doesn't. I said to myself, I go, look, if God has given us gifts, and if this is nothing compared to what our families went through in Cuba, to what people before us went through, making sure that we were successful. So I was like, look, man, this is, I gotta grow that alligator skin, which I have throughout the years. So it really doesn't impact me anymore. I embrace it. I think it's part of the process, and I tell folks, look, the only thing that bothers me is that a lot of good people don't want to get involved because of that.
Right.
So there are amazing individuals in our community that would be amazing public officials, but they're like, man, it's not worth it. So I'll tell you that's why one of the reasons why I take it on in the fashion that I do is to make sure that it opens the door for other folks. But it was tough, but now it doesn't impact me anymore, right? It's like kind of like, hey, thank you very much. I appreciate the comments, even if they're bad. The other thing I'll tell you, you can't allow people to steal your joy of serving. So what you're doing as a chair of that committee, what you're doing pushing this issue forward, whatever. If somebody's out there, like, tell them, hey, I appreciate it. Don't even engage on the back and forth. Maybe the first couple times to see if it's constructive. Most constructive folks will sit down with you, they'll work something out, but once you see that the person doesn't want to get involved, doesn't want to be part of the solution, doesn't want to even sit down with you, doesn't have the decency to even talk to you on the phone, you're like, listen, man, thank you, but we're moving forward. And it's tough to get there, but I've been able to get there throughout the years. I've lost a little bit more hair, but it is tough, man. And I've seen it happen to you where folks, they don't even know, you don't even get paid for this. You lose money doing this,
Yes.
the amount of time you put in. And people don't see that. So I appreciate you, but I think the vast majority of people appreciate you. But yeah, that 5-10%, you're never going to change. You know?
And it's human nature that you get attacked, and eventually it's your temper that you lose, and regretfully. But I was always curious, how do politicians then handle that? But thank you.
No problem. But yeah, it's the unfortunate part of service, but man, that's the main thing. Don't allow anybody to steal your joy from serving others. So, you got anything else?
I'm good.
No, and again, man, shout out to Miguel, because not only does he do what he does with the committee, but also giving back, making sure through his company that he's helping out kids in our society acclimate and be great citizen, and he's part of that inclusive, to ensure we have an inclusive society. So thank you for that. And as we start closing this episode, I mean, some words that you want to leave out to folks. What's the future look like on this issue going forward?
We can't lose our hopes. We have to continue the push. We are more advanced now than ever in history. And it's to find an equitable solution. It's not about closing the mines down. It's not about making the problem go away. It's about coming to a consensus where we all can live together. And I think we're closer than ever. And it's right now, it's only a matter of a short time to get there. So.
No, you're right. Hope and optimism, but more than that, I mean, just the work that you're putting in. And I've been there, done that. I was an aide up there when nobody would listen to us on this issue, because outside of this area, if you're not impacted by it, nobody really kind of pays attention until you show them the facts, which I know that's part of the process that you show them. So I encourage all of our residents, make sure that you go out there, follow Miguel on social media. He's leading the push on this with our state representative now, who represents the entire town of Miami Lakes, Tom Fabricio, and our senator-elect, who knows this issue very well, Brian Avila. So there is more optimism today than there's ever been on this issue. Final words for our community, inspiration for the students, where sometimes they see issues that are huge, that have major interest on one side, of they're like, there's no way we could take them on and make a difference. So what kind of advice do you have for them?
I'll tell you guys, last week, I'll just use as an example, we own Therapy by Design. It's a rehab clinic for pediatrics. Most of our population is autistic. And we had a patient of ours been with us since he was 5 years old, and his dream is to become a chef, an entrepreneur and a chef. And I had asked the mayor if we could give a tour to this patient. it was life-changing for him. However, yesterday he was at my office, and he came to me and said, "I heard you put me out. You have pictures of me everywhere." So that I said, "I told you I was going to make you famous," and I did it. I said, "Here, your pictures." He's like, "Yeah, you have an autistic kid all over the place," and my jaw dropped. I said, "What did you say?" I said, No. I have a kid that has a dream and a vision, and you've been fighting to get it, and you're achieving it. You're making your goals. Each of us have a deficit, all of us, whatever it is. It's a matter of how we act on it and what we push and fight for it. This kid is amazing. I'm beyond proud of him, and I let his mother know, and his dreams are going to become reality. They're happening. And for all of you guys, my son included, that you fight for your dreams. There is no one else have them but you. Do it and you'll get it. So don't ever give up.
No, there you have it. Fight for your dreams, and don't be afraid to take on, major issues in our society. As you can see, you can make an incredible difference, not only in your lives, but that of your neighbors and everybody in our society. Tune in next Wednesday on YouTube, Instagram, Facebook, and Twitter.